Yeah, Paulo, we are hearing some stories of doom, if I could use that word, coming out of Brazil. There was a professor at the University of Sao Paulo who summed up the scandal by saying, and I'm quoting here, "In Brazil, we are living the collapse of the political system, the collapse of the parties that are part of that political system." Do you agree?
Yeah, that's it. There's an exhaustion of a political and an economic system that was set up on the basis of our 1988 Constitution. Obviously, you can let it collapse and replace it. It's like fixing an airplane in flight. It's doable, but there has to be a sense from the political class that they work for the interest of the nation, and that is what it's difficult to detect in the current crisis. What the actions by politicians from all different parties doesn't seem to be related to any sort of national interest other than protecting politicians from prosecution. President Temer, I think the reasonable thing for President Temer to do, a 76-year-old politician that never actually dreamed of being president of Brazil, an accidental president of Brazil, to do us all a favor and resign, because what he did is indefensible. The problem, the basis of the crisis in Brazil, the economic crisis, is a crisis of confidence. Obviously, he adds to that crisis of confidence, undermining the good things that he was doing in the economy, and we're showing results. So if you want to protect your legacy in terms of getting Brazil out of this economic hole, just, apologize to the Brazilian people and resign.
Fernando, if we look at party politics in Brazil right now, Temer says that his ruling coalition will hold, and they will hold in order for him to pass these key reforms that he's trying to put through Parliament. One of the parties, it's a mid-sized party in the coalition, the PSB, has already defected. Do you think that coalition will hold?
Well, it really, when we are talking about the reforms specifically, there is a matter of how the population perceives the need of this reform. So regardless of any coalition, there is a sense that if the Congress does not do anything for us to continue our recovery, our economic recovery, this will be on the account of the Congress. So regardless of the coalition, it seems that now politicians have a common agenda to try to approve these most necessary reforms.
Otaviano, the Financial Times had a report on Brazil, and it said that Temer is one of the most unpopular presidents in Brazil. That's according to polls conducted in Brazil. But his fiscal reforms to restore sinking public finances and lift the country out of its worst recession have won market support. So in that respect, is he on the right track?
Yes, the economic policy has delivered exactly what will take for Brazil to recover a healthy fiscal trajectory. In a very stringent one, a spending cap, mandating constitutionally that in real absolute terms, public spending is to be capped over 10 plus 10 years. It's very hard to obtain. Now you have to give flesh and blood to that cap, which includes a wave of additional reforms like the pension reform. So in that regard, a milder version of it was also promised by Dilma before. The question is that she was completely, without support to do it. But then this agenda was kept and deepened by President Temer, and it is true, it's being delivered. You mentioned previously the unemployment. It is true. There is a time lag between what happens in the real economy and the employment level. So we are bound to remain, the Brazilian economy is bound to remain with high unemployment levels until at least the end of the year. But one thing is for sure, there is no way one can see any other path without the cluster of reforms that have been proposed by Minister Meirelles, and there's no other way.
Jose, our correspondent talking to us earlier on, he was talking about this trial that's taking place in the Electoral Court, also known as the TSE, and it resumes next week. Now, that trial is looking at the 2014 election, isn't it?
Exactly. They are trying to discover if there was some kind of wrongdoing in the election of Dilma and Temer. And Temer's defense is that he says, well, I don't have anything to do with Dilma's accounts, as if it's possible to be elected vice president without the money from the presidential, the president itself. So, but he has a chance. In fact, this week he had a meeting with PSDB, the main party that supports him besides his own, and he told all the major politicians in PSDB that he has the confidence to get 4, maybe 5 out of 7 votes in the tribunal next week. If he does that, he pulls that, this will be a major victory, political victory for him, because that stalls all the process to get him out of the job. So,
right.
Probably are going to see much more drama next week in Brazilian politics.
Yeah, Paulo, if I understand this correctly, this court that's sitting next week, well, actually resumes its deliberations next week. If they find that there were illegal campaign donations in the 2014 election, can it render the outcome of that election null and void and therefore strip Temer of his presidency right now?
Yes, that's what some people in Brazil, maybe too optimistically, are expecting to happen, that the 7 judges will raise up to their responsibilities in the face of all the evidence that they will do exactly that. There would be an appeal, and one version is that that appeal goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, also acting in the interest of the country, resolves this matter, and that's it. And then the Speaker of the House, Rodrigo Maia, becomes president for a month. In that month, he calls for indirect elections for a president that would fulfill the remainder of the term, the Dilma-Temer term that ends in December of next year, with direct elections already scheduled for October of next year. Obviously, this is the judges, if they take into consideration the credibility of the institutions that they represent, could do what Brazilian politicians have been having enormous difficulty in doing, which is act in the interest of the nation. It looks like an old-fashioned kind of way, but it does, the national interest does exist. It is possible to do politics decently. The politicians in Brazil and the judges in Brazil have the opportunity. Let's see what they do next week.
Fernando, the Brazilian Supreme Court has ordered President Temer to cooperate with federal police and answer the questions that they put to him. How and when will that take place?
Yeah, I mean, although there is an investigation against him, we must bear in mind that this kind of procedure in Brazil are relatively long. They last long. So although there's a bit of commotion and a lot of people following it, we don't believe that the Supreme Court, neither the Electoral Tribunal, will take the president out of his seat. They didn't do this while Dilma was the president. They let the Congress do it. And we believe that both Supreme and Electoral Tribunal will do the same. It seems to be a pattern of decision by both courts. And although there is an investigation going on against the president, this will take a while. And we believe that until next year, it won't be concluded.
Otaviano, the ratings agency S&P, they say that they threatened, actually, to send Brazil's rating further into junk status. What would the impact of that be?
Look, what matters concretely for the public dynamics is the risk premium established in the market. So the ratings come after moments. They are not leading the process. Now, the prospects of debt sustainability hinge on the approval of the reforms. What the rating agencies are saying is that the less likely eventually the reforms become, then the likelihood of a downgrade increase. So we should not put the focus on that. We should look at what matters, which is the approval or not of the reforms.
Right.
One thing important to keep in mind as well, let me go again to my forest, is the following. What's at stake now is clearly the end of a cozy relationship between some groups in the private sector and the public sector, the spin-off of which is the current composition of Congress. So these are doomed to die and are dying to extend their life.
Right.
That's what's at stake. In that regard, for instance, there are some analysts who have highlighted the emergence of new leaderships, not only in the big city, São Paulo, but spread over in Brazil, of new characters coming up during the elections, the municipal elections of last year. It will take some time, at least 1 or 2 rounds of election, for these new people to come over and take over Congress.
Right.
What's at stake, what they're discussing here, is how long the condemned system will survive and escape from harsher punishment.
Okay. Jose, there are some analysts in Brazil who say that the president is barely hanging by a thread, his political life is hanging by a thread, and that he's basically staying there to negotiate some kind of pardon. Is there any credibility to that, and who would succeed him, really?
Well, he can try, and certainly he's trying, but it's very, very difficult because every week you have some news, new elements to show that this political system and his government, let's just say one thing, he has 10 ministers, 10 under federal investigations. So it's not just the president, it's all his cabinet. And I really don't think that the system is getting any better. In fact, what we are seeing is that the system, if it's not reformed, he is going to be rotten in plain sight. And in my point of view, what we are facing right now is a prolonged crisis. And all the good economic indicators that we had today are from a period of time from the first trimester, which is now over. All the new signs are much worse than those.
All right, we are going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for being with us.